You've always believed that kindness is the right thing, that if you live with a good heart, you'll be met with love in return, that giving leads to receiving. It's what we're taught from the time we're little. But have you ever felt tired from being kind? You've held back to keep the peace, only to be taken for granted. You've gone out of your way to help someone, only to be left alone when you needed help. You've put other people's feelings first, only to lose sight of your own. Little by little, your kindness starts to feel like a burden. The thing that keeps you quiet when you should speak up, that makes you forgive when you should walk away. This isn't a fairy tale. It's the reality that so many kind people live with every single day, and no one ever warns you about it. In today's video, we'll go through 8 ways kindness, when given to the wrong people or in the wrong places, can quietly destroy your life. Not to make you stop being kind, but to help you be kind with strength, to know your limits, to know what's truly worth it. Because kindness is not weakness. And sometimes to live a happy life, you have to learn how to say no. 1. You say yes too easily. Have you ever wondered, why am I always the one who says yes? The one who nods, says sure, even when deep down you're tired, unwilling, or feel it's unfair. You might think that's kindness. That always being helpful, never upsetting anyone, is a sign of being a good person. But if you're saying yes just to avoid making others uncomfortable, while pushing yourself into exhaustion, resentment, or confusion, that's no longer kindness. That's self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The Stoics didn't live to please people. They lived to protect the integrity of their minds, something no one can take from you, unless you give it away. Every time you say yes when your heart says no, you dig yourself deeper into a hole. With each agreement that goes against your values, you shrink a little. In your relationships, at work, even in your own sense of self. Soon you start waking up with a quiet kind of dread, not because you're overworked, but because you're living someone else's life. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be selfish. It teaches that living with reason is the first duty of a mature human being. And that reason will tell you clearly when to help and when to stop. Epictetus, a slave who became a philosopher, once said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." You can help the whole world, but if you can't master your own yes, you're giving up the most vital freedom of all, your inner freedom. So the next time someone asks you for something, take a breath. Ask yourself, do I truly want to do this? Am I betraying any of my boundaries or values? If I say no, could that actually be the most respectful choice for both of us? True kindness isn't measured by how often you nod. It's measured by whether your yes comes from strength, not from fear. 2. You let others take advantage of your kindness. Have you ever felt this way? You help someone with all your heart, thinking you're doing the right thing, but instead of gratitude, they come back with more demands. Bit by bit, they take your time, your energy, your patience, and your trust. And the moment you stop giving, they turn away, or worse, they blame you. Kindness without boundaries quickly becomes a resource to be exploited. The Stoics understood this well. They weren't against helping others, but they held fast to one core principle. Give because you choose to, not because you're being controlled. Epictetus once said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." If you're constantly acting out of fear of disappointing someone, of being judged, then you're letting others control your mind. And to the Stoic, that's the greatest failure. Real kindness shouldn't drain you. It should come from intention and awareness. Only when you give willingly, within the limits you've set, does your kindness have true value and lasting strength. Don't get it twisted. Just because someone needs help doesn't mean you have to give it. Just because someone shows up with a sad face doesn't mean it's your job to save them. You are not responsible for fixing the whole world, especially not at the cost of breaking yourself. Remember, you weren't born to be someone else's background character. You were born to live with integrity, strength, and intelligent compassion. 3. You don't set personal boundaries. Have you ever felt frustrated or uncomfortable, but still couldn't bring yourself to speak up? Do you let others intrude on your time, your emotions, even your private life? Just because you don't want to be inconvenient? That's not kindness. That's the absence of personal boundaries, and it can quietly destroy you from within. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In Stoic philosophy, the mind is sacred space. You can't control the world, but you can and must control how you allow the world to enter your life. Personal boundaries aren't walls to push people away. They're maps that show others how to treat you with respect. Without them, you let other people's emotions take over yours. You let their schedules overrun your own. You let society's expectations shape who you are. And slowly you lose yourself in a role that was never meant for you. Stoicism doesn't teach selfishness. It teaches you to know where you end and where others begin. Remember, boundaries are not rejection. They are the purest form of healthy love for yourself and for others. If someone is crossing a line, have the courage to say something. You don't have to yell. You don't have to explain yourself. A simple sentence like, "I need some space right now," or "I'm not able to help with that today," is enough to stand your ground. And here's the beautiful part. When you set boundaries, the kind people will respect them. The ones who leave, their life's natural filter. Always remember, no one can enter your mind unless you open the door. 4. You sacrifice yourself to be liked. We all want to be liked, to be accepted, to feel seen and valued by others. That's a deeply human instinct. But the danger begins when we start trading parts of ourselves just to earn a nod of approval from the outside world. Have you ever done something you didn't believe in just to make someone else happy? Have you ever smiled when you were breaking inside, agreed with something you didn't believe, or stayed silent in the face of injustice, just because you were afraid that speaking up might cost you someone's affection? If so, you're not alone. But you also need to know that's the fastest way to lose touch with who you truly are. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't let the applause of others drown out the voice of your own reason." In Stoic philosophy, the wise don't live for the approval of the crowd. They live by the harmony between their reason and their actions. When you stay true to your values, even if others don't understand, you remain at peace. But if you keep bending yourself just to be liked, you'll eventually melt into a shape you no longer recognize. And one day you'll look in the mirror and ask, who am I really living for? Epictetus put it bluntly, you can either be loved or you can maintain your dignity, but rarely both. The approval of the crowd is fleeting. Today they cheer you on. Tomorrow they may turn away. But your inner truth, your courage, your integrity, your ability to live in alignment with your ideals, that's something no one can take from you. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. The people who truly care about you will respect your honesty and your boundaries. So the next time you catch yourself doing something just to be liked, pause and ask, am I doing this because it's right or because I'm afraid of being disliked? Because being liked is a blessing, but being true to yourself, that's freedom. 5. You're afraid of disappointing others. Have you ever said yes to something just because you were afraid someone would be upset if you didn't? Maybe it was a favor, a work expectation, or even a role someone else assigned to you. You agreed, even when your heart said no, because the thought of letting them down felt unbearable. But pause for a moment and consider this. Every time you choose to please someone else by going against your own truth, you're disappointing yourself. In Stoic philosophy, the real tragedy isn't that others might be unhappy. It's that you betray your own reason and values. Epictetus said it best. Never sell your soul just to be accepted at a cheap price. If someone is disappointed because you were honest, because you protected your boundaries, That disappointment says more about them than it does about you. It means they were attached to a version of you that wasn't real. Marcus Aurelius also reminded us, do what is right. The rest doesn't matter. You can't control other people's emotions. What you can control is showing up truthfully, with strength, with kindness, and without abandoning yourself in the process. Because sometimes disappointing others is necessary so that you don't end up disappointing the one person who matters most, you. 6. You use kindness to avoid conflict. Have you ever smiled, nodded, and said, "It's okay," while inside you were hurt, angry, or overwhelmed? You didn't want to argue. You didn't want others to see you upset. So you took the safe route. Be kind. Stay quiet. At first glance, that might seem noble, but in truth, it's a form of avoidance. And over time, it causes you to slowly disappear from your own life. Stoics weren't afraid of confrontation. They didn't seek it, but they didn't run from it either, because they understood a peaceful life isn't one without storms. It's a mind strong enough to weather the storm without losing itself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Say what you mean. Do what you believe. Don't let fear cripple your actions." When you use kindness as a shield to avoid hard conversations, you're not just deceiving others, you're betraying yourself. You deny people the chance to know the real you. And worse, you miss the opportunity to build relationships based on truth instead of just comfort. Stoicism teaches that temporary discomfort is better than long-term resentment. An honest conversation, even if uncomfortable, is far more valuable than quiet endurance. Facing conflict isn't about winning. It's about protecting your clarity, your truth, and your self-respect. Because if you have to pretend to agree just to keep the peace, then that peace isn't real. It's conditional silence. Learn to speak your truth, calmly, without anger. Because when you find the courage to speak up, you don't just free yourself, you give others permission to be real too. Kindness isn't a mask. Kindness is strength, when it stands side by side with honesty. 7. You think saying no is selfish. Have you ever felt guilty for turning someone down? Worried that if you don't help, people might think you're cold or selfish? You want to be the kind one, but sometimes you forget that saying no doesn't always mean you're being unkind. In truth, saying no is an act of self-protection, and sometimes it's the best thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for the other person too. Stoicism teaches, when you say no, you're refusing to force yourself into something that doesn't align, and that's essential for inner freedom. When you turn down a request that goes against your values, you're not just protecting your well-being, you're also teaching others to respect your boundaries. Because if you keep saying yes just to keep people happy, you're creating dependency, both theirs and yours. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let guilt drag you into things you don't want to do." That doesn't mean you should be cold or distant, but saying no is how you stay rooted. It's how you build a meaningful life, one that reflects your time, energy, and deeper values. Saying no isn't selfish. It's the courage to live with integrity. So remember, you don't have to please everyone. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to say no. 8. You confuse kindness with weakness. Kindness is a beautiful virtue, but if you're not careful, it can be easily exploited. You might think you're being kind, but in reality, you may be acting out of fear. Fear of being seen as selfish, or fear of standing your ground. And when you fail to set boundaries, your kindness can slowly turn into a form of weakness. Stoicism makes it clear. Kindness does not mean always saying yes. Stoics understand that pleasing others is not the goal of life. Their goal is to live with reason, to stay grounded in values they believe in, not just go along with what others expect. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't do anything that goes against your reason, and don't live according to someone else's expectations if they don't reflect who you truly are." Kindness isn't about saying yes to everything. It isn't about bending over backwards to be liked. True kindness comes from strength, from knowing when to help and when to say no in order to protect your well-being in your core values. If you're only helping others because you're afraid of being seen as weak or selfish, then you're not helping them, and you're definitely not helping yourself. Weakness isn't in saying no. Weakness is when you're too afraid to hold the line on what truly matters to you. Real kindness comes from inner strength. It comes from the power to choose when to give and when to hold back. True kindness is strength, not weakness. As you've seen, kindness can be a double-edged sword. If you're not careful, kindness can destroy you, making you live someone else's life and blur your true essence. But the key is, kindness is not weakness. True kindness only exists when you know when to say no, when to set boundaries, and when to stand firm in what you believe. This doesn't mean you have to become cold or indifferent. On the contrary, you can still be kind, but live with intention and conviction. When you choose to help, it should be a voluntary decision from the heart, not driven by fear or the desire to be liked. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The only way to truly live freely is to live according to your own reason." So don't be afraid to say no, don't fear disappointing others, and don't fear showing your true self. When you live authentically, not only can you help others meaningfully, but you also maintain strength, independence, and mental freedom. Remember, true kindness isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about knowing when to help and when to protect yourself. And that is the path to a life of honesty, freedom, and peace.